And based on analysis, the city council ultimately authorized 5.5-year contracts for new residential trash hauling with, again, Republic Services, who is our current hauler, and again, Tennis Sanitation for recycling, who is our current hauler there. But they were chosen due to the fact that they met the criteria in the RFP, including the lowest price for both of those proposals. So I gave you this large document, this solid waste management ordinance, which is not, the easiest read. So I wanted to kind of let it soak in, and we'll take some time to look at the ordinance. But what needs to take place eventually, within the next few months, is that we need to amend, in particular, some of the ordinance that has to do with our new contracts. So I did outline some of the changes in the solid waste management ordinance. I did some redlining for you. And then on the standards, I just included the actual standards document with no red lines. So tonight, I'm just kind of updating you on the requirements for change and getting some feedback from you. And we'll continue to refine this and bring it back to the Environmental Commission next month and probably February to finalize these amendments, which will then go to the City Council. We would like to have the amendments in place by, May at the latest, I think, because, again, we are starting these new contracts with both the haulers beginning in January. So one of the items that we do need to amend are the hours of collection. When we had organized our trash hauling back in 2011 and 12, we had a contract with Tennis Sanitation at the time that called out specific hours of collection, which were, I think it was 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. But the ordinance at the time, which was strange, it was 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So the current ordinance talks about the licensed haulers can collect trash, the licensed commercial haulers can collect trash from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then the contracted haulers for our residential trash and recycling, they had to comply with whatever the contract said. Well, we're going to just remove that altogether and have it be standardized. And so moving forward, it would be the 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. for all haulers. Multifamily recycling. So this is one of the big changes that we need to make. Currently, our ordinance discusses how multifamily properties have to supply recycling to their tenants, but it doesn't say that they have to necessarily use the City of Maplewood's recycling contractor. We amended our recycling ordinance, I'm guessing probably 2009 or somewhere around there, where we included multifamily in our recycling program. And at that time, we amended the ordinance to identify that, but we didn't necessarily require that the multifamily utilize the contracted hauler. But it allows them to opt into the city's recycling program. And back when we rolled out the multifamily recycling, the city tacked on the recycling fee onto all the multifamily buildings' water bills. So regardless if they use the recycling or not. So most people, as you can imagine, opted in. However, there's some few residual buildings that have not, and there's a bit of a gray area as to whether they should be paying this recycling fee, because there was never any policy put in place for that. So we really want to clear that up, and we want all of our multifamily buildings to be included in the City of Maplewood's recycling contract. It'll allow us to better manage our recycling program, to report on the recyclables, which is a requirement of the county each year. So that's something we need to modify in our ordinance. In the contract with Tennis Sanitation, they are now offering recycling dumpsters to multifamily properties. Previously, they were utilizing just 95-gallon carts, and this has become challenging for some of our properties that have like 150 units. So in their buildings, they have to roll out like 20 carts or more every recycling day, which is cumbersome for them. So if they were able to have collection of recyclables in the dumpsters, it would be more convenient, and we'd probably find, anytime something's more convenient, people tend to use it more. So we have to modify our ordinance to discuss the dumpsters that could be rolled out. And then along that end, I will be working with Tennis over the next few months to identify the multifamily properties that would be eligible for dumpsters. So in the contract, they discuss allowing, or I should say, rolling those out to properties with 21 units or more. So we'll contact all those properties to see if they would benefit from the dumpster, and then work to exchange those carts for the dumpster. And then it's a really good opportunity to do some education and outreach to the tenants. Right now, Ramsey County is offering grants for multi-tenant properties to make improvements to their recycling program. So a lot of these newer buildings have like a trash room on each floor. Some don't really have like a recycling chute as well. So just kind of making improvements to those areas, or they offer these multifamily recycling bags. They're real durable bags that people can haul their recyclables down to the parking area. So again, it will be a good opportunity to do that education and outreach. And then the recycling fee, as I had indicated initially, that fee was tacked on to all of the multifamily properties' water bill. And now we have had a few properties that are kind of challenging that. We've had this contract with a different hauler, but yet the city have been charging us. So we want to just clear that up and standardize that to ensure that all multifamily properties are on the City of Maplewood's recycling program, and all are paying equally into that program. We don't identify in our ordinance how the recycling fee is paid, and it is rather confusing, especially when you have someone new moving in and they're wondering about trash and recycling and how it all works. Well, we have to explain that the recycling fee is actually tacked on to the water bill, and the trash fee is billed through our contracted hauler, Republic Services. So it's all a little confusing. And the reason for this is the City of Maplewood doesn't do utility billing because we don't manage the water service here in Maplewood. So there are some fees that we do tack onto that water bill, one of them being the recycling fee. Another is this environmental utility fee, which I looked at that ordinance, and that's to manage stormwater. I looked at that ordinance, and it identified where that fee would be charged. So I think it's a good opportunity to add that here too, just so people understand where that fee is being collected. And then, of course, Tennis would bill the City of Maplewood for the recycling, and then we would pay them from those fees that are coming in through the water service. Commercial recycling, there was very minimal outlined in the previous ordinance. So I think we should identify, number one, the fact that small businesses and churches can opt into our residential recycling program. This has been really well received, and it saves businesses money. We'd like to do a lot more outreach on this opportunity, but if currently it's if the business or church can have recycling collected through a 95-gallon cart, then they would qualify and could opt in, and they pay the same amount as the residential properties. And now Tennis in the contract has offered recycling dumpsters to the businesses as well for a different fee structure. But nonetheless, I think it's a really good deal for them. So we need to modify our commercial recycling ordinance. And I think this is just kind of a, you'll have to excuse me, I made a few additions here before the meeting, and I think this is just saying again that the recycling fee would be charged on the water bill. Organics. Now, we don't have a curbside organics program yet, but we do know that Ramsey County is planning for that during the term of this 5.5-year contract. So there's some language in the contract that talks about Republic Services working with the city to roll out this curbside organics. So we should have some language in regard to that, as well as kind of talking about food scraps in general and how now the county has this program where residents can actually drop off. They like to term it now food scraps, not organics, because it's apparently confusing. A lot of people don't know what organics mean, but food scraps really identifies what we're getting at. So they're offering this drop-off service at their yard waste sites and then their collection sites, which Maplewood has one right here at in the parking lot next to our Maplewood Community Center. And then finally, just want to identify that we're going to do some updates to our licensing. We had our city attorney look at some of the liability coverage and determined that those should really be modified based on today's standards. And then the next steps, as I was indicating, so this will be before the commission December, probably through February. Looking for a recommendation at the end of February on our amendments, and then we'll go to the city council probably in March. So it's a lot to take in, I realize that, and I didn't identify, too many changes on the red lines, but I thought we could take, 20 minutes here to discuss and see if you have any questions, comments, or additions that I could include. So with that, I'll turn it over to the commission.
Thank you very much for the update and for running through and explaining a lot of that stuff. I agree, there's a lot in here, but, considering that it hasn't been looked at for some time, it didn't seem like there were that many changes, so I was expecting more red, so I don't know, I was encouraged by that, but still a bunch to go through here. Did either of you have ideas or suggestions on where you wanted to go first, or did you see any corrections? Maybe that would be a first question.
A couple comments.
Okay, Commissioner Bottomley.
And these are two things that may not be very significant in the overall scope of this, but anyway, on page 5, near the bottom, there's a red small business in church. That seems like it could be limited, and and I don't know what you would call the other things that aren't churches or small businesses. They might be other public or nonprofit organizations or clubhouse for Girl Scouts or something like that. That don't fall under the church or business, small business category. I think that could be very easily amended by just saying something like in any other structure that produces garbage every week or periodically. And that's on page 5. The other one is on page 8. This probably does not affect very many people in Maplewood, but it said that the fee would be charged on the water bill for, I forget exactly what that was in reference to. You mentioned that just a few minutes ago, but also at the bottom of page 8, where it says payment of fee, talking about invoicing every family residential dwelling every month with water and sanitary sewer bills. Some don't have either of those, either water bills or sewer bills. So that probably would leave me out, but I like trash collection, so I don't want to be left out.
Yes, very good points. I took, number one, the payment of fee language, I took that from the city's environmental utility ordinance, but I know what you're saying. Some people are on sanitary sewer and well. There's also some residential properties that get their water service through other cities, not St. Paul Regional Water Services. So I do know that the city does billing directly to those residents.
Is that your current arrangement
I have
right now, Commissioner Brenneman?
a well and septic system, but plenty of garbage, so need that to get collected.
So I'm curious.
It seems to be working now. There is some arrangement, I'm not real sure exactly what it is, but the fact that there's a group of about 20 houses where I live that all have their own wells and their own drain fields. But sure have a lot of garbage every.
Do you get a recycling bill or environmental utility fee?
I think so.
It's a separate bill from the city?
I don't recall
Okay.
exactly.
Well, that's very good points, and we should identify that it's not just this water and sewer bill. But we do want to identify, I guess, a majority, it's tacked onto that water bill, and
Oh, yeah.
others would be billed directly through the city. So that's on the payment of fees. And then on the small business and church, I was thinking we didn't identify what those were, so I attempted to define them, but I didn't say too much about it, did I? I called them, I defined them. A business or church that can have weekly recycling collection accommodated by the city's contracted recycling hauler. That's pretty vague.
I was just suggesting that there could be, I'm not personally aware of them, but I'm fairly certain that somewhere within Maplewood, there are some things that are neither churches nor
Like charities or community things.
small businesses.
Maybe an organization, it could read, means a business, organization, or church that can have weekly recycling collection.
Yeah, it would be a simple fix, I think.
So yeah, I mean,
Small
business, I guess, is a pretty broad term. Like I was just thinking of, we're at election time, so you see different campaign headquarters pop up and empty storefronts and things like that. Well, that is kind of a business. They have a budget and money in, money out. So, but,
Just say small organizations.
yeah.
So this definition kind of leaves it up to the city and the hauler to decide if they can accommodate, that business.
Because I think the intention, right, is that larger companies, thinking of the mall, they're going to have kind of their own deal. 3M would have, would not opt into our plan, just the scale of that, wouldn't work for them. The school district negotiates their own contracts, things like that. So it's sort of just this everything else, like everything non-residential is.
Right, so we
Kind of what that
can only
means.
supply the 95-gallon carts, or, I can't remember what size this one dumpster would be. Clearly, that wouldn't be adequate enough for a large business.
I feel like Tenn showed us a photo of it in their report, but I don't remember if they said a size gallon-wise or anything like that.
So very good suggestion to add organization. I know they were collecting recycling from like a community garden this summer, so clearly an organization. So those are good comments. Thank you.
Did you have some others, or were those,
That was it.
that was your list?
I do like that you changed it to food scraps versus organic. That was-
Yeah, the organics term does get confusing because there's organic produce, without pesticides. So, if people associate that with, okay, I'm shopping, there's organic chemistry, which is something completely different, and then there's organics. Recycling seemed to be the term, but the list is pretty extensive with those kits, so there's a lot more that you can put in there than you can put in your backyard compost that you're doing on your own. So food scraps is more accurate because then people know what it's talking about, but
That's just it, is you might have like little chunks of lumber left over from a project and you think, well, it's wood, it's organic, so I can put it in there. No, you can't.
that's the difference.
It's not it's food scrap.
The county rolled out the organics collection or drop-off at their yard waste sites maybe 2 years ago, and now are doing these satellite sites. So all the signage and everything has organics on it, but just in the last few months, they decided to rebrand that to food scraps. So you'll see some changes there. And, I still need to add a lot of language in that section, but I'm not sure how detailed we want to be because we don't really have a curbside organics collection program yet. That section was left blank from our previous ordinance because 7 years ago, we didn't even have the organics drop-off. But we set it aside as a future chapter, knowing that it was coming.
I did, as I was reading through that section, was having a little bit of a callback to our urban agriculture ordinance in how this is phrased, that it has to be 5 feet from the property line, can't be in the front yard. Essentially, making sure that there's a little bit of distance between your compost pile and your neighbor's property. And that was, similar to what we talked about during the urban agriculture. So I paused a little bit and thought about, is that something, the approach that we took with the urban agriculture issue is that we wanted to encourage that kind of thing as far as the front yard gardening and, that it could go up to your property line if that's the area that you can actually garden on, as long as you're in agreement with your neighbors on it, or that there wasn't an issue. But I guess it wasn't like anything where I was like, well, we've got to change this to be consistent with that. I think compost piles are likely a little bit different. But it just seems to me like it shouldn't really be an issue if someone was placing that in their front yard, as long as it was following these guidelines, that it's not a nuisance as far as odor, vectors of disease, or attracting unwanted wildlife or unsightliness.
So I pulled this text from, it's an ordinance already, or is it in the standards? You'll have to excuse me, it's been a while since I worked on this. So we want to make sure, and if we're changing it here, obviously it changes elsewhere. I think it's in standards. So your point is that, especially like a compost bin, maybe not so much a pile.
Yeah.
What's the harm?
Or sometimes, sometimes folks have their pile is in a neat little fenced off section. The neighborhood that I live in, we've got kind of oddly shaped yards. Like my backyard is next to my neighbor's front yard because of the angle that my corner is. So, I had my little vegetable garden and stuff like that. Like technically, it would have been, if my address was not on that side, it would have been in the front yard. But I mean, in theory,
Yeah, we do have, a lot of side lots, like you're referring to. You're on a side lot, right? with a street in the front and a street on the side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you technically have 2 front yards, which is challenging. So yes, let's look at that. I want to check with the
But,
code
yeah,
enforcement
kind of like if
officer.
that's the spot on your property that worked, or if it was
Maybe it's screened
on the side
from
between a
bushes.
couple houses.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of it's well kept enough that it's not, unsightliness is the term that's in here, that if it's,
I'm all for having stuff in the front yard. I hate the fact that front yards are just basically, this looks pretty and that's it. You can't do anything else with it.
yeah.
Right, and
And-
you're referring to the urban ag ordinance where we talk about allowing vegetable gardens in the front
Front
yard,
yard.
Yeah.
which seemed to be controversial at the time.
Yeah, and it was interesting. I think that, people were bringing up the issue, and some of the people that were bringing up the issue live in places where, like, the homeowners association rules would kind of trump this anyway. Like, that's sort of just what's accepted in their neighborhood. But yeah, we have a lot of different kinds of neighborhoods in Maplewood, for sure. And some have teeny tiny backyards, so they, do having a compost pile or gardening in their front yard. And a lot of people that are composting are doing it to use in their gardens too. So that's why it was kind of in my mind falling into that same
Yes, I
same
appreciate
issue.
that. We'll look at modifying those placement requirements. It's nice to have clear standard placement requirements in the event that a compost pile, I don't know, gets out of hand, unsightly, and a neighbor complains, so the code enforcement officer can address it. But doesn't mean it can't be in a front yard. So we'll take a look at that.
Is that a frequent call to the code enforcement?
Well, I remember, a couple discussions with our previous code enforcement officer, Chris.
Yeah.
This new gentleman, I haven't heard anything, but it's mainly people who, call it a compost pile, but it's more like a little dump pile.
Yeah.
So it's just not being maintained very well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's a few issues. Not a lot. And maybe less now that we have the drop-off food scrap site. I don't
Right,
know.
yeah.
Well, thank you for those comments. And in that section, I did look at so all I say about the collection via the food scraps by our hauler is the City of Maplewood Solid Waste Management Standards may allow for food scraps to be collected by the city's contract garbage hauler. So that kind of opens it up to a future program without having to go back in and modify our ordinance. And then on the section below it, the collection of recyclables from commercial buildings, we didn't have any information on there. So I checked with the state laws and so forth, and it's pretty generalized, but just talking about, they have to supply recycling per state statute, which I believe, off the top of my head, reads something about if they generate a certain amount of trash, then their commercial business has to collect at least 4 different kinds of recyclables, like glass, aluminum, so on and so forth.
Okay.
So that is a state law. And then talking about the small businesses can opt into the city's program.
Small organizations.
And organizations, got to add that. I find that this code is very wordy. I could spend a long time modifying it, but I don't know that we want to go that deep of a dive if it's not necessary.
To
Sometimes
reword things that aren't changing necessarily?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
can drum up some controversy, but This, of course, was written after a very controversial time
Yeah.
when the city organizes trash hauling. So there's maybe a lot more detail than has to be in here, especially the standards. It's pretty common to have standards for different areas. Our tree ordinance, we have tree standards, and we've had to modify those from time to time, you know, when different technologies come into play. So it allows us that flexibility to make those changes on that policy without, as long as they don't, you know, go against the ordinance itself. So since we're bringing the ordinance here, we should really look at the standards too and update that.
Were there any sections in particular, let's see, the particular items that we went through as you were introducing this topic, the multifamily recycling, you'd mentioned an issue where they're paying the fee now, but maybe weren't actually using the service versus now requiring the service. Which section is that we're, I just want to make sure that we look over that, because that obviously needs to be scrutinized a bit and make sure that it's right, if there's already a little bit of a challenge from
So on
landlords and
page
property owners.
9,
Okay.
section 30-22, collection of recyclables from multiple family dwellings. And you can see the old language there. It was quite extensive. Talked about the city requires all owners and managers of multifamily dwellings to provide recycling services to all their residents. And then it goes into detail about how they have to do that, and then how they have to report the amount collected each year to the city. And that has been a real challenge, trying to get that information from some of the properties, because, of course, they're contracting with, who knows, some various licensed hauler, but, so I'm proposing to scratch all that and add the new language above, which basically is taken from the residential recycling. It's similar language. So it talks about the recyclables have to be collected by the city's contracted hauler. And then it talks about that payment of fee.
Mm-hmm.
So it identifies that that'll be collected on the water bill, sewer and water.
Or directly.
With the, on Part D there, with the payment of fee, I would is there an instance where they would not be on city water or St. Paul Regional Water Service, sewer or water?
Yeah, I mean, they got a well and a septic tank.
Yeah.
Not likely,
Okay.
but we should add that same
Just,
language.
yeah, the language maybe there should match the language that we
Yeah.
put in the residential as well.
Multifamily is defined as properties with 5 or more units. So, you know, there could be some small 5-unit, but I doubt it. Because we only have
doubt it.
about 200 households that are still on well.
Okay. Yeah, you could picture maybe like a duplex, but
Yeah.
five unit would be maybe a stretch, but
Yeah.
possible. It's,
I doubt it,
yeah.
but might as well just put or directly. I don't know.
Yeah, I just said, reading through, I don't see any issues that I've got with that or any other suggestions.
We'll have
We're
to.
looking at it again, so, we can take a,
We'll have to
second look
notify
later.
our multifamily properties to let them know this code will be changing.
yeah.
And that it will be the requirement that all multifamily use the City of Maplewood's hauler. Some of them well, there's one building in particular that I'm thinking of, that, it's a new building, and we didn't have very good communication apparently because, well, I won't get into all the details, except to say that they found that using a recycling dumpster worked better for their facility. And the city of Maplewood only offered those recycling carts. But now, we don't have that issue. So, our contracted hauler can accommodate for any scenario now.
Right.
But we never defined, how that payment was working.
Yeah.
So it was easy to kind of challenge that piece under the current ordinance.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And just checking back on that list, I think that we went through, collection license, we didn't really have a discussion on that. That makes sense. That was the recommendation of the city lawyer. I don't have an issue with those dollar amounts. Small business, church recycling, we kind of covered that.
Apparently on the licensing, we had a couple haulers that stopped getting licenses in Maplewood because of that requirement for such a large amount of auto liability insurance. So they're proposing to drop that 5 million to 1 million for the bodily injury to be more in line with other cities.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that, I don't feel like that's in my purview or expertise, so we'll go with their recommendation.
And then I'll be working closely with our business licensing clerk and our city clerk on looking at this code, because of course, a big portion of it is, things that they do. They gave me some feedback, but I know they'll have more for me. And so I'll come before you next time with more red lines and kind of description of those changes.
All right. Well, good deal. If there's not any further comments, well, we can go ahead and move along from that. That was just the discussion piece, so no motion or anything is needed. So that brings us to the 2019 annual reports.
Yes, thank you for your comments on that. I will update the ordinance with additional changes that we discussed tonight, plus continue my research with other staff and so forth, and bring you back more detailed changes. And next time, I'd also like to kind of discuss how we can do a little bit more education and outreach with our city residents on the standards. I mean, does anyone know that there's solid waste standards out there that we should all read? Who wants to read them? I'm not sure, but maybe there can be a quick guide. Yes. So thank you. So moving on then to the 2019 annual reports. So annually, the Environmental and Natural Resources Commission and Community Development Department submits reports to the City Council and the public. And tonight before you, I included a memo, which is a draft of the 2019 annual reports, including the ENR Commission report, the update, the sustainability report, and the solid waste content. And then I wanted to show you on the website here, I'm going to pull this up. I wanted to show you last year's annual report, which turned out very well. So we do this for our department, and the Community Development Department is a liaison to several commissions, so we update the council and the public on those commissions, as well as some of our activities that are taking place in the community development. And this report will be updated for our 2019 information. And then it will be available during the State of the City luncheon, which is scheduled for January 15th this year. And then it will be presented to our city council in early 2020. So this is kind of an updated version of what we used to do. It's more visual, more fun. But one of the unfortunate things is we don't get as much space to tell our story. So we have to kind of be real clear about it and use a lot of fun pictures. So here was the Environmental Commission's piece here. We had 2 pages, you may recall. And I was directed to take a picture of our commission again this year, but we only have 3 here, so maybe I'll just ask that you submit some pictures, or we might have to use the ones from last year. But, so that information is included in your packet here on what I propose for the Environmental Commission piece. And then we also update the council and the public on the sustainability measures that the city of Maplewood is undertaking. We, of course, are a Green Step city, and one of the requirements of being a Green Step city is that you do these updates to the public. Oh, and here's that solid waste piece. So since we manage the city's solid waste program, we like to give updates on that as well. So that's in your packet. And then finally, the sustainability piece talks about the various initiatives the city took to reduce emissions and pollution within the city operations as well as citywide. So that's what I wanted to show you, just so you could see how visually pleasing that is, and compared to kind of what I gave you, which was just a lot of text. So with that, I'll turn it over to you for any comments or questions or changes to the materials I gave you.
Thank you. It is much nicer to look at it when it's in color and photos and a little more organized and, or graphically organized, I should say. Any thoughts or any comments, corrections from either of you on the information in our packet?
The first part is the Environmental and Natural Resources Commission Annual Report, and there's 3 pages of text, which I clearly won't have enough room for, but I really wanted to focus on some of the highlights, which our commission, and I guess my position in particular, was really busy this year working on the solid waste request for proposals. Mm-hmm. So it left limited time to really focus with this commission on any kind of meaty project, but we did put together the RFP. We had commissioners that participated in that proposal review committee, and then of course you saw an update of that, the new contracts. So that's one of the big highlights. And then we always identify all of the items that you looked at over the year. It's kind of fun to look back and go, wow, we really did a lot, didn't we?
Yeah, there's maybe a chance that some of the information that is on here is going to be covered for the public, just as far as the new contract itself, but yeah, just the RFP review process is probably important to do, as well as highlight the additions or changes briefly. But I think you've got it pretty succinct on here as it is.
We had limited time to focus on the environmental goals, and that's one of the things I'd like to discuss in the staff reports later on how we do that. But, you know, when your staff has limited availability to kind of spearhead some of those goals, we find that they just don't happen. So on the environmental goals, I did outline what we discussed, but I don't think we made much progress on those for 2019, which is kind of a strategic planning in the areas of energy, accessibility, and creating a funding mechanism for sustainability projects.
As I was looking through, so it's a list of 18 items here, environmental issues reviewed in 2019. And I do like looking at this because, like you said, it's a checklist of, you know, kind of what we covered. But I wonder if, because I think this is in order of the year that you have these, I wonder if we could regroup them. You know, there's some things that are strategic, there's some things that are a quick review. Like when you get into like a master plan or the community food assessment, those are kind of big projects that do, I think, tie into our goals pretty well. They're sort of like, this was our business, you know, that you could check, we did that, we updated this, we corrected. I mean, Tom was on the commission for a long time, so resolution of appreciation is important, but I wonder if those could be grouped a little bit differently to reflect that even though that we are making progress on those goals, because
Yeah, that's a
there's
great idea.
items in
Yeah.
each of those that tie in pretty well, I think. So you kind of, you know, like you've got your big picture and then you've got your day-to-day business.
Right, it
stuff.
doesn't have to be this, here's what we reviewed, January, February,
Yeah.
you know.
Like the wetland buffers is something that we do and we take a close look at, but it's kind of a one-time thing, whereas the climate adaptation planning process is going to be decades, you know.
Yeah.
That's something we're going to look at.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Probably a much easier read as well.
I like themes and bullet points. Just, you know, it works graphically like you were saying in that document too.
Okay. So the next, unless there's any other comments on the ENR, the next information is for the sustainability report. And we focused a lot on our green step cities, how we're continuing to measure the metrics and how we improved on many of those, and which gives us our step 5. We're maintaining our step 5 by improving on, I think it's at least 3 of the core metrics is a requirement. Well, you can see here we've improved on a lot more than that. Talked about our opportunity to display our clean energy stories at the Minnesota State Fair at the Eco Experience. That was it was a huge honor to be invited to participate in that. And then things that we do within our city facilities with our green team. This year we're focusing on the environmental purchasing policy. Your commission actually reviewed that policy back in 2011, and we are updating that now and going to be doing some education and outreach with employees on how to make, you know, more environmentally sensitive purchasing for the city.
I'm not sure if it's appropriate in the sustainability section or the ENR, but maybe recognizing Meg's contribution as the intern. Just when you mentioned the purchasing program, that was, and the green team, she had a lot of effect, or, she did a lot of work to move those things along.
Yeah, we have some great pictures of her doing outreach on that climate adaptation planning.
Yeah.
So it'll probably include something like that.
Yeah, it'd be good to
Yeah.
have her on there. She did a lot of work in a short amount of time.
And then waiting for some information on, from the Nature Center. And I'm not sure, just a little bullet point in the sustainability is enough, but it's always kind of challenging because this report is from the Community Development Department. And of course, Nature Center is part of the Parks Department, but of course, we all coordinate together as a team on our environmental and sustainability initiatives, but want to give a call out to the Nature Center and what they do with environmental education. So waiting for some language from them on that.
I don't know that I've got anything else on the sustainability piece. Anything from you guys to add there, or comments?
I think you covered it.
Yeah, good, okay. And then the solid waste annual report? Kind of just
Do you
went-
like the term solid waste? I don't either.
It's not very glamorous.
Trash and
I don't know,
recycling and trash?
I mean, that's what the ordinance is called. So,
Maybe we'll rename that. But I didn't put any fancy charts together. I didn't have time, but I do call out, the goals of the program and the new contracts, which I think I already identified in the ENR, but I don't think we'll have room for all that in both, so.
yeah. I mean, it's not an exciting term, but it's consistent with
What
the
it
name
is.
of the ordinance and
Yeah.
describes exactly what it is, so.
Oh, maybe it's the juvenile mind in me. Every time I hear solid waste, I think poop. So,
Outhouses.
Well, I can't use that word.
no, I'm just saying that's like what goes through my
Yeah.
head. So it'd be nice if it was
And
called
then you
something
giggle.
else.
Yeah.
Just a good emoji for that. It's an official document, so probably don't want to go
Probably no
there.
emojis.
Well, maybe you could stand for a picture when we adjourn with the three of you, and I can Photoshop the rest in, or something.
Should we have like a caricaturist, like a cartoonist?
There you
just
go.
do.
All right.
I would guess that, most people maybe would have a profile picture that they use on LinkedIn or Facebook or something like that they'd be able to send you.
Yeah.
It's just
So just send us,
funny.
we probably need an email reminder.
I'm
But
concerned Commissioner Okeson is going to forward that picture, I don't know, with that space hoodie on.
Oh, with my Darth Vader hoodie? Yeah, I could do that. Yeah, I can. You can just put me there. That'd be great. Darth Vader hoodie wrapped up.
So
Yeah.
you'd rather the photo not be from Halloween? Is that what you're saying?
That's a hoodie I wear all the time. That's not Halloween.
All right. Well, thank you for your comments on that.
But I do like
and
the idea that we all dress up in cosplay and then do it. Yeah. Like,
Next year.
Your
We could be
favorite
ENR
theme.
character?
like we could be ENR themed, so like somebody could be water and somebody could be a tree and
My request would be that we be the Parks and Rec characters.
Oh,
It
okay.
seems appropriate for what we are working.
so are you Leslie Knope then?
I don't know. I don't have as many 3-ring binders. So, okay. Did you just want comments? It does have motion checked. Do we
Oh.
need to
Oh.
move that along with a
We
motion
don't
or
have to
anything?
be all formal like that. No, I apologize. So I appreciate your comments.
Okay. So that-
And again, this will be modified and more visually pleasing, and will be included in that report for the State of the City event. By the way, I don't think I had this on the staff updates, but that is an open event. Find that on our website. That'll be held on January 15th. It's a great event. We have the mayor give an update on the state of the city. We usually have some guest speakers and a nice lunch.
I saw something about that recently. It sounds like it's the school district superintendent is maybe do they call it a keynote speaker or guest speaker or something like that? And they have some pretty major changes with some of the school reorganization and construction, so I imagine that's going to be a big part of what she talks about for that. All right, so it takes us through agenda item number 5, the new business, and that moves on. Now we're moving on to unfinished business. Don't believe there's anything that we needed to cover tonight. Agenda item 7 is visitor presentations. We do have a couple of visitors with us this evening, so if you are interested in or feel comfortable with just coming up to the podium, if you wanted to greet us and let us know if there's anything that you want to share with the commission. So I believe that the microphone is on, but if you would just share your name and...
Hi, I'm Carly Thomoni. I don't have anything to share, but thank you for welcoming me here.
Glad you're here.
Greetings, I'm Adam Johnson. Thank you as well for letting me be part of this, and it's
Excellent.
good to hear what's happening in the city. So.
Excellent. Well, thanks for your interest and thanks for your attendance. We do not usually have big crowds, and so it's always nice to have friendly faces in the chairs too. Commissioner presentations is agenda item number 8. We didn't add anything to that, so on to number 9, staff presentations.
Thank you. I wanted to remind you that in January and February, we usually have to reschedule our meetings due to the holidays that fall within that third Monday. So I'm proposing some new dates, and I'll send out an email just to remind and get some feedback on this. But the suggested dates are January 28th, that's a Tuesday, and February 25th, that's also a Tuesday. So we like to have these dates before the first of the year so we can include that in our calendars, get it on people's schedule. So I'll send an email out to all commissioners with those dates and get some feedback, but that's likely the dates that we'll hold those meetings on. The next is the January 2020 election of chair and vice chair. So in your rules of procedure years ago, you wanted to ensure that we announced that this was taking place the next month, so that people had an opportunity to kind of consider it, maybe announce if they were interested, just so it wasn't kind of sprung on you. So the rules of procedure do call that out as taking place on the first meeting of the month, so that'll be in January. Currently, our chair is Ted Redmond, and our vice chair is Molly Miller. And that'll be an election, so the commissioners will make a recommendation for a chair, and then you all vote on it. So let me know if you have any questions or want to make an announcement.
Can we send an email out to everybody to remind them that this is, please?
I'll do a follow-up email on that as well.
Is there any term limit?
There is not.
Okay.
Yeah, historically, we've rotated amongst, I don't know that anybody has done a chair or vice chair 2 years in a row. And typically, we have, there's no rules, but it just seemed like it kind of developed as the practice that the vice chair moved into the chair role the following year. But I think there's some years that we've deterred from that just by vacancies on the commission and folks that weren't interested or their schedules didn't allow. So, yeah, it's good to have different people do it. I think a few people have done it twice, so.
Okay.
As a chair, you of course run the meeting and on occasion might attend a city council meeting to update the council on some of the items we've worked on.
You get to use the gavel.
Right.
It's fun.
Okay, well, thank you. Look for that on your agenda in January.
Okay.
I wanted to let you know about a program that we do every year. It is the Holiday Light and Extension Cord Recycling. So we're doing that here at City Hall. We're one of the drop-off sites throughout the Twin Cities. From December 2nd until January 31st, you can drop off your lights and extension cords. It's right outside City Hall, so you can do it any time of day. It's in these large barrels, and we've already filled 2 full barrels. They had to haul them away already.
Nice.
And then the barrels that are out there now, I see, are both half full. So just want to make a note that, it's just the lights and extension cords. Sometimes we get these funny tree toppers or random little...
You get the inflatables, like those.
I have a question. Is it possible that we could start this earlier? Like the weekend of Thanksgiving?
Yes, we can.
Because I don't know. I'm one of those people, I pull out my lights Thanksgiving weekend, and that's when I put up everything. So
Sure.
it's one of those things where,
We used to work with the Recycling Association of Minnesota, and they would manage this program. They would drop off the bins, and then they would pick up the full bins, and it was really easy back then. And that's back when they worked with people with disabilities, they termed it, to kind of dismantle the lights.
Oh.
And it just got so overwhelming. They just got so much product now that everyone's converting to LEDs and so forth. So they just kind of serve as the warehouse and kind of do the education and so forth, and then ask each one of the organizations that are partaking to, come up with your own program. So we're working with a local recycling company who they supplied the barrels for us, and they pick it up and bring it back to their facility, and the lights they're kind of chopped up, and the lights are removed, and the copper's removed, and those parts are recycled. So it's one little program that we're actually making some money on, because that copper is
valuable.
good market for that right now. So we can start it whenever we want.
Yeah.
We could do it year-round if we wanted,
Well,
but
probably,
I wouldn't recommend that.
yeah, I just think it would be nice if we could start Thanksgiving weekend.
Okay, that's a good suggestion.
Because I don't want to hold on to my lights until December 2nd. I want to get rid of them right away.
Well, December 2nd was only 4 days after Thanksgiving
True,
Oh.
this year.
Yeah.
But not every
previous
year,
years,
yeah.
Because Thanksgiving always moves around.
It always sneaks up on me, and then I'm like, oh, the holiday lights. All right, moving on. I wanted to announce that the city of Maplewood, we do this. Oh, I skipped over one, I apologize. First, I wanted to let you know about the Environmental and Natural Resources Commission vacancy. So we have one vacancy currently on our 7-member commission. And that vacancy went out for, they advertised the vacancy, and a gentleman was appointed to that. However, I understand that he was also interested in the Park Commission, and since he didn't get on the Park Commission for whatever reason, decided not to follow through with the Environmental Commission. So that vacancy is still there. I'm not sure how they'll handle it, but hopefully within the next few months we'll advertise for that again.
Okay.
And then a reminder that Commissioner Gould is on a leave while he's teaching up in Bemidji for a few months.
Worked.
So he'll be back. And then now moving on to the awards, I wanted to let you know that our Economic Development Commission, they sponsor these awards yearly, and they present them at the State of the City event. And one award that I wanted to bring to your attention is the Environmental Sustainability Award. So if you know of an organization, a business that is improving their energy conservation, maybe doing waste disposal policies, practices, operational procedures, which will yield cost savings and improvements to their bottom line. That type of business is something that the Economic Development Commission wants to spotlight and present this yearly award. Years past, the 5-8 Club was awarded when you may recall, were participating in the Energize Maplewood program and making improvements, energy efficiency improvements to their facility. And then Gethsemane Lutheran Church, they also did a lot of improvements through that Partners in Energy program. So if you have a business that you want to submit for recognition, please go online and do so. And again, those will be announced January 15th.
Does the business need to fill out the application, or it's, people can nominate
You
business?
can nominate.
Okay.
Yes. And then we have our Maplewood Nature Center programs, and I apologize, I didn't print them off. I know how much fun you have announcing them. If you want to announce them, you could read them right here from the screen. If that's, I think I have 4 or 5.
I'm ready, let's go.
All right, you're on, Commissioner Okeson.
S'more Nature Fun, Saturday, December 28th from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m., all ages. Take a hike or snowshoe down to the pond for a fun exploration. Then make s'mores, $5 per person. Check it out, Maplewood Nature Center, 2659 East 7th Street. Register by December 26th at maplewoodnaturecenter.com. Activity number 16555. Luminary Workshop! Adults, children, 8+ with an adult. Saturday, January 11th from 10:30 a.m. to 3 p.m., $10 per person. Craft a variety of luminaries to light up the dark winter evenings. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Luminaries? Yeah. Okay. Make an extra for our luminary hike and waive your luminary hike registration fee. Again, at the Maplewood Nature Center, activity number 16628. Snowflake Wonders! All ages, $5 per person, prepay by January 2nd. Cut and create beautiful snowflakes and other crafts from simple to complex. Learn to identify snowflakes by shape and size. Peer at preserved snowflake crystals on the microcam. Saturday, January 4th, from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. at the Maplewood Nature Center. Register by January 2nd. Activity number 16627. Didn't I just do this one?
Oh, this
This is a different day.
is just the hike.
Oh, luminary hike!
Hike the next week.
Right. Adults, families, minimum age of 5. Friday, January 17th, 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m., $5 per person. Prepay by January 16th. Snowshoe. Need 6 inches of snow or hike our luminary trail if conditions allow. We'll check out holes in the ice and let you try making a new one. Win an Ice Globe Luminary Kit to take home. I love prizes. Maplewood Nature Center. Register by Thursday, January 16th. Activity number 16629. Those look cool.
Those are pretty.
This is it.
Live animals. All ages. Meet a snake and a salamander and learn where Minnesota's wild reptiles and amphibians go in the winter. Share your stories about real wild animal encounters. Saturday, January 25th. Free! 10:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. at the Maplewood Naturewood Center, 2659 East 7th Street. Register by January 24th at the maplewoodnaturecenter.com or call 651-249-2170. Activity number 16630. Free.
Thank you.
Wonderful job. Now that we are all excited about all the things that we can do at the Nature Center, that brings us to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
A motion.
Motion
Second.
by Commissioner Okeson, seconded by Commissioner Buttleman. All in favor? Aye. So let's see, 8:20, we are adjourning our meeting.